Welcome to The Explainer. I'm Dr. Kim. You know, we usually just turn on the tap, fill a glass, and drink, right? We rarely stop to think about the absolute cinematic level of experimental chemistry going on behind the scenes to hunt down the microscopic things hiding in that water. Today, we're bringing one of those ubiquitous, invisible targets completely out of the shadows. We're talking about sulfates.
So why do we actually care about sulfates? Well, they're everywhere. They naturally occur in natural waters, for sure, but they can also spike dramatically. Think mine drainage, where pyrite oxidation just dumps massive amounts of this chemical into the environment. And this really matters for us, because while a little bit is totally fine, excess sodium and magnesium sulfates basically act as a laxative. Yeah, nobody wants that surprise in their tap water. So nailing down the exact detection of these invisible ions isn't just cool chemistry, it's absolutely crucial for public health.
To understand how chemists pull this off, we're going to break this down into 5 phases. We'll look at water sampling and preservation, the gravimetric method, measuring through turbidity, titrimetric and electrode methods, and wrap up with automated colorimetric techniques. Let's get right into it.
Phase 1. Water sampling and preservation.
There's an old laboratory axiom that is absolutely true. Your test result is only as good as your sample. If you mess up the collection, literally the most expensive lab equipment in the world won't save you. Field techs actually have to make strategic choices on day one. They have to pick between a grab sample or a composite sample. A grab sample is exactly what it sounds like. It's a quick snapshot in time and space, perfect for a nice, stable well. But if they're dealing with a river or a wastewater stream that's changing by the hour, they need a composite sample. That means combining multiple grabs over time to get a true representative average of that chaotic environment.
And there's a strict protocol before a single drop ever goes into the sample bottle. You absolutely cannot test stagnant water. Technicians have to aggressively flush out the system. If they're at a municipal line, they flush it with 3 to 5 full pipe volumes. Or if they're out in the field tapping a groundwater well, they've got to purge it with 3 to 10 full well volumes. Getting rid of that stagnant water is non-negotiable. We want to test the active water supply, not just what's been sitting dead in the pipes all weekend.
All right, moving on to Phase 2, the gravimetric method.
Once that pristine sample hits the lab, the real detective work begins. For high sulfate concentrations, anything over 10 milligrams per liter, we usually start with the classic gravimetric method. Think of this as highly precise scientific baking. We take the water, heat it up near boiling, and toss in a precipitant called barium chloride. This forces the invisible sulfate to bind with the barium and crash out as solid crystals. Then, we filter it through specialized ashless paper, wash it, and literally throw that paper into a blazing hot muffle furnace. The fire burns away the paper completely, leaving absolutely nothing behind but pure barium sulfate salt, which we can then just carefully weigh on a highly sensitive scale.
The genius of this is selective precipitation. As Truman ChemLab notes, the quantitative determination of sulfate ions can be accomplished by using the selective precipitation of the sulfate ion from a hot solution. Basically, by controlling the heat and the pH, we can physically isolate just the sulfate from a whole soup of other chemicals. We are literally creating a tangible, physical way to weigh the invisible.
Phase 3. Measuring through turbidity.
But what if the sulfate levels are lower, like 1 to 40 milligrams per liter? At that point, those physical crystals from the gravimetric method would just be way too tiny to weigh accurately. Enter turbidimetry. This is a brilliant workaround. Instead of weighing solid crystals, we're basically measuring how foggy the water gets. When we add our barium chloride, we convert that invisible sulfate into a uniform suspension. A machine then shines a light right through it. The cloudier the water, the more light gets blocked, which means a higher sulfate concentration.
Precision here is everything. A tech places 100 milliliters of the sample into a flask, adds 20 milliliters of a stabilizing buffer solution, and dumps in barium chloride crystals. And this is where you start the timer. You stir it at a constant speed for exactly 60 seconds. Then, you wait. At precisely the 5-minute mark, you pour it into a photometer to read the light absorbance. Compare that reading to a calibration curve, and boom, you've pinpointed the exact concentration.
Phase 4, titrimetric and electrode methods.
Now things get a bit more cinematic. When we're dealing with really complex samples, especially organics, we have to use intense, highly experimental preparation methods before we even touch an electrode. According to Metronome protocols, we're talking about Verschmidt digestion, literally digesting the sample in a bomb with ethylene glycol, or Schoeninger combustion, where you ignite the sample inside a platinum cage enclosed in a flask of pure oxygen. These extreme measures guarantee every single bit of organically bound sulfur is converted into measurable sulfate.
Once prepped, we titrate. Take a look at this titration curve using a calcium ion selective electrode. It's a total chemical balancing act. A titrant is slowly added and the electrode tracks the voltage. You see those sharp, sudden dips in the red line? Those are our equivalence points. By tracking that massive voltage drop, the system knows exactly how much titrant was needed to react with all the sulfates. The precision is just staggering.
There's also the optrode method. This is a precipitation titration too, but it uses a photometric sensor and a dithy zone indicator to find the endpoint. Instead of a dip, check out that dramatic voltage spike. The blue line just shoots straight up when it hits the equivalence point. Because this sensor is so insanely sensitive, it is absolutely perfect for catching those incredibly low sulfate concentrations. Nothing slips by it.
Finally, Phase 5, Automated Colorimetric Techniques.
Imagine a massive national laboratory getting hundreds of water samples every single day. They definitely do not have time to bake filter paper in furnaces or manually stir flasks for exactly 60 seconds. They need serious efficiency. So they turn to automation. The magic number here is 30. Using the automated methylthymol blue method, they can process over 30 samples per hour. It's an absolute powerhouse for large-scale environmental monitoring.
This high-speed method uses a really clever two-step pH shift right inside the machine's tubing. First, the sample hits a low pH environment with barium chloride, forming our familiar barium sulfate. But then, the machine instantly shoots in sodium hydroxide to spike the pH. At this high pH, any leftover barium that didn't find a sulfate partner immediately reacts with a chemical called methylthymol blue, and that reaction produces a super vibrant blue chelate.
The real math happens visually. The methylthymol blue that doesn't complex with the barium, it just stays its natural color, which happens to be gray. So the machine simply blasts the light through the fluid at 460 nanometers to measure how intense that gray is. More gray means there was more sulfate in the original sample to steal away the barium. The system calculates the levels instantly and it's already on to the next sample.
This is great because it elegantly summarizes the analytical detective's entire toolkit. You can see how seamlessly chemists match the method to the exact challenge. High concentrations? Boom, gravimetric method with a furnace. Mid-range? Turbidimetric photometer. Organics or super low concentrations? High-tech electrodes. And for sheer brute force volume? The automated methylthymol blue method. It's a completely adaptable system built to conquer literally any water matrix.
Which brings us to the end. Next time you turn on the tap to fill your glass, I want you to ask yourself, what invisible chemical battles were fought in a lab somewhere to guarantee that water is safe? From a tech in muddy boots purging a well, to the blazing heat of a muffle furnace, to the sterile glow of a photometer reading gray dye. These rigorous procedures are the unseen shields protecting us every single day. Stay curious, keep experimenting, and this is Dr. Kim signing off until the next explainer.